Hello, gals and guys. It's your host, Phil Larson, and this is your motivational high five on purpose. Let's do this. Welcome to this day. Today is January 20th, Inauguration Day. Yesterday, the podcast celebrated its 1-year birthday. Happy birthday. And today, I want to talk about purpose. Sometimes we get caught up in the question, we get stuck here where we ask, what's the purpose of life? And I gotta be honest, I think that's a wrong question because it's too big. It isn't helpful. We've got to take that question, we got to make it our own. What is the purpose of my life? Because as we've learned, as we've talked about, the only one we have control over is ourselves. You know, this last week we celebrated Martin Luther King Jr., and it got me thinking, all of the big historical influencers, MLK, Mother Teresa, even Hitler, they made the purpose question personal. What's the purpose of my life? And as those three are very different people, we see that there is such thing as a healthy purpose and an unhealthy purpose for your life. To find your healthy purpose, you need to answer two questions. Here they are. What are you passionate about? And the second one is, what does the world need? Just answering one of those two questions, we get an unhealthy purpose. With answering question number one, what are you passionate about, but not caring about question number two, which is, what does the world need? Then you find yourself becoming someone like a dictator, like Hitler. Or if you answer question number two, what does the world need, without caring about what you want, you get into this sort of guilt-tripping savior complex, where maybe you are devoting much of your life to helping other people or bringing what you think is a message that the world needs without regard to yourself and to keeping yourself as healthy as possible. To find your purpose, answer, what are you passionate about? What do you want? And also, what does the world need? And Phil, how'd you come up with that? Well, I didn't. This comes from a quote by Frederick Buechner. The quote is, "The place you are called to is the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet." And in honor of Martin Luther King Jr., let's end on a recording from the StoryCorps podcast. In the day before his murder, Martin Luther King Jr. spoke at a strike rally by sanitation workers who were experiencing less than humane working conditions. And to the very end, MLK found his purpose by pursuing his passions of preaching for the oppressed to a people who needed to hear his words of hope.
Taylor Rogers and his wife Bessie were there.
I mean, it was wall to wall with people.
And it was storming and raining. He preached, and he said that,
I've been to the mountaintop.
oh yeah.
Because I've been to the mountaintop.
And I looked over and I seen the promised land.
And I've looked over. And I've seen the promised land.
I might not get there with you,
I may not get there with
but
you.
we will get there.
But I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
And he was crying. Tears were rolling down his cheek.
Preachers were crying, people were crying, and everybody was crying. And
He really talked that night. I mean, he really, really talked.
you could tell by the expression on his face and the feeling and the sound of his voice that he knew something was going to happen. He said, because I'm not fearing any man.
I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Next day, he was killed.
You know, it's kind of like you lost a part of your family. You just really can't describe it. He stopped everything, put everything aside to come to Memphis to see about the people on the bottom of the ladder, the sanitation workers. It was just some terrible days back then, but with God's help, we came through.
This is what it's like to live a purposeful life. What do you want, and what does the world need, and how can those meet? Answer those questions, and sometimes it's hard to believe that we deserve what we want, and that the world even needs what we want. But somewhere in you, keep looking, it's there. The world needs it. And sometimes it's hard to convince ourselves these positive things. And so, in an act of faith, We choose to look at a reflection of ourselves in the mirror, and we repeat an affirmation. And today's, when you find a reflection of yourself, is this. Will you say this to yourself? My living of a healthy, purposeful life is valuable to the world. Your healthy purpose follows the dreams of you and the needs of others, regardless of life and death. Because a life lived healthily and purposefully cannot die. Do you want that sort of life? Well, that's up to you. It starts with you.